It began subtly, almost imperceptibly, a low, persistent static in the back of my mind like a radio tuned between stations. It was always there, a background hum I couldn't quite place. Gradually, the hum grew into a weight, pressing down on me. It felt like an invisible anchor relentlessly pulling me down, further and further. I remember standing in the kitchen one morning, the sun just beginning to rise. Sunlight was streaming in through the window, painting the room in warm hues. But I was feeling nothing, absolutely nothing. Just an echoing emptiness. The world outside was vibrant, full of life and energy. But I was behind glass, separated, disconnected from it all. Like an observer, not a participant. This emptiness became my constant companion, always lurking, always present. It was slowly stealing joy from every moment like a thief in the night. Simple things felt impossible, insurmountable. Just getting out of bed each morning was like climbing a mountain, a monumental effort. I listened to the world wake up outside my window, the birds singing, the cars starting. And with every sound I felt more isolated, more detached, more profoundly alone. It wasn't sadness, not exactly. It was a profound absence of feeling, a void where emotions should have been. A barren landscape where hope simply couldn't survive, couldn't take root. People would look at me with concern and ask, "What's wrong, are you okay?" But I had no answer, no explanation for the emptiness that consumed me. "I'm just tired," was the easiest lie, the simplest way to deflect their concern. The truth was far more complex, far more terrifying. The truth was my own mind had turned against me, whispering insidious thoughts, telling me that I was worthless, a burden to everyone around me. These thoughts circled endlessly in my head, a relentless and unforgiving loop, draining every ounce of energy, leaving me depleted and hollow. The loneliness was, without a doubt, the worst part of it all, surrounded by people, by friends, by family, yet never feeling more profoundly alone, more utterly disconnected. I watched myself go through the motions of daily life, a hollow imitation of a person. But the real me, the person I once was trapped far away, lost in the darkness. The connection to others, the bonds that once held me, had snapped, leaving me adrift. I felt invisible, like I was fading away, becoming transparent to the world. I was convinced that no one could truly understand the depth of my despair. The suffocating darkness I lived in, the weight that pressed down on me from all sides. It was a private hell, a personal torment that I couldn't escape. And I was its only resident, trapped in solitary confinement within my own mind. Every day was a struggle to pretend that everything was okay, to put on a mask and face the world. To simply survive, to make it through another day without completely falling apart. The weight was always there, a constant presence, a heavy burden on my shoulders, silent and crushing, slowly suffocating me from the inside out. My world lost its vibrancy. Everything faded to gray. Food lost its taste, music became noise, laughter sounded foreign. It was as if a filter dulled every experience, robbing life of meaning. I lived in a black and white photograph, disconnected from the world's color. My emotions were numb, a shell blocking out pain and everything else. I knew I cared for people, but I couldn't feel it. The connection was a memory, not reality. Depression told me I was alone, so I made myself alone, canceled plans, ignored calls. Each excuse built another wall around me. I was desperate for connection but pushed people away. Time distorted, hours vanished or minutes stretched into eternity. Days blurred together, the future was unimaginable. My existence shrank to the unbearable present. I was simply surviving, not living, waiting for an end to a pain that felt infinite. For a long time I thought depression was a personal failing, but you can't snap out of a broken brain any more than a broken leg. Depression is a real illness, not a weakness. It's caused by a mix of genetic, biological, and psychological factors. Brain chemistry is key. Neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine regulate mood, and in depression these systems malfunction. The very organ you use to try harder is the one that's unwell. Depression physically changes the brain. Areas like the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex can shrink. Chronic stress worsens it, creating a vicious cycle. It's a measurable illness, not a character flaw. Knowing this doesn't cure it, but it fights the stigma. Depression is incredibly common. Millions live with this unseen weight. Realizing I wasn't alone was strangely comforting. My private hell was shared by many. Understanding the science was the first crack of light. There wasn't a dramatic turning point, no sudden epiphany or earth-shattering revelation. It wasn't a moment of fireworks or a grand gesture that pulled me from the depths. It was something far more subtle, far more insidious in its simplicity. Just a crack in the wall of despair. a tiny fissure in the seemingly impenetrable fortress of my own making. On a particularly bad day, the darkness felt absolute, a suffocating blanket that smothered any flicker of hope. It was a weight that pressed down, stealing breath and blurring the edges of reality. Lying on the floor, paralyzed by the weight of it all, I remembered a childhood moment of happiness, a simple, carefree memory, untainted by the present. That memory, so distant and fragile, sparked a question, a tiny ember in the vast darkness. What if I could feel that way again? What if that joy, that lightness wasn't lost forever? It wasn't hope, not yet, but the possibility of hope. A faint glimmer, a hesitant maybe, a seed, planted in the barren landscape of my despair. I realized with a chilling clarity that I had two choices, stark and unavoidable. Surrender, to let the darkness consume me completely, or fight, to claw my way back, inch by agonizing inch. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, a small part of me, a tiny, flickering ember, wanted to fight. It was a fragile thing, easily extinguished, but it was there. The thought was exhausting, the very idea of resistance felt like scaling a mountain. But surrender was worse. The thought of succumbing completely was unbearable. I clung to that tiny, what if, as a lifeline, a thread of hope in the overwhelming darkness. That night I reached out, my hand trembling in the void, sent a text, a desperate plea whispered into the digital ether. I need help. 3 simple words, laden with the weight of my despair. Pressing send was the hardest thing I'd ever done, a monumental act of defiance against the darkness. It was an admission of vulnerability, a crack in the carefully constructed facade of strength, a crack in my isolation, a chink in the armor I had worn for so long. When I finally let someone in, allowed them to see the brokenness within, I felt a sliver of relief, a momentary lifting of the crushing weight. I had opened the door, just a crack, a sliver of an opening in the wall, and let in the first sliver of light, a fragile ray piercing the oppressive darkness. That small act, that tiny crack in the wall, changed everything. The darkness was no longer absolute. The seed of hope had begun to sprout. Recovery was slow, a gradual process of rediscovering myself. It felt like learning to walk again after a long illness, each movement requiring immense effort. It was a series of small, deliberate steps, each one a victory in itself. I focused on the present, not the overwhelming future. The first was making a doctor's appointment, a daunting task that had been on my mind for weeks. It meant saying, "I think I have depression" out loud, acknowledging the invisible weight I had been carrying. My doctor listened with empathy, and together we made a plan, a roadmap to navigate the darkness. Therapy, a safe space to explore my thoughts and feelings without judgment. Maybe medication, a tool to help regulate my mood and energy levels. And small lifestyle changes, like incorporating more movement and mindful moments into my day. Therapy became my sanctuary, a consistent appointment I looked forward to each week. It was a place to unpack the weight of my experiences, to understand the roots of my pain. I learned my thoughts weren't facts, they were simply interpretations of reality, and they could be challenged, reframed, and ultimately changed. Cognitive behavioral techniques helped me break negative patterns, those deeply ingrained habits of thinking that kept me stuck. It was hard work, requiring consistent effort and a willingness to be vulnerable. But each session let in more light, illuminating the path forward. I started reconnecting with the world in small ways, re-engaging with life after a period of withdrawal. Even just a walk around the block, breathing in the fresh air, feeling the sun on my skin, a simple pleasure I had forgotten, tasting tea, savoring the warmth and the quiet moment. These small actions became anchors, grounding me in the present moment. They were tiny victories against numbness, sparks of life in a landscape of gray. Self-care was about basics, the fundamental building blocks of well-being. Eating nourishing food, fueling my body with what it needed, sleeping soundly, allowing my mind and body to rest and repair, and opening the curtains, welcoming the light into my space. Light became a daily ritual, a reminder of hope and renewal. These weren't cures, but tools, instruments to help me navigate my journey. They were steady actions that built a foundation for healing, brick by brick. Each step was a rebellion against the darkness, a declaration that I would not be defined by my struggles. I learned to celebrate small wins, acknowledging my progress no matter how incremental. Recovery wasn't linear, there were setbacks and stumbles along the way, but every step mattered, each one contributing to my overall progress. I was building a life, brick by brick, moment by moment, one small step at a time, with patience and perseverance. The sun felt closer with each day, its warmth a promise of brighter times ahead. I was moving forward, not always quickly or easily, but always forward. One morning I woke up and didn't feel dread. The weight was lighter, no longer an anchor, just a heavy coat I could take off. I got out of bed because I wanted to. I made coffee and actually smelled its aroma. The sun felt warm on my face for the first time in ages. Gratitude became my new practice, small joys returned. I noticed the taste of strawberries, the sound of rain, the comfort of a blanket. Happiness wasn't euphoria, but quiet moments of peace. My relationships began to heal as I let people in. Vulnerability brought connection, not distance. Honest conversations led to real support. The loneliness faded, replaced by belonging. Bad days still came, but I had tools and perspective. Depression was part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I found strength and compassion in the journey. If you're in the darkness, hear me, you are not alone. Depression lies, telling you you're uniquely broken. But millions have walked this path. We are a silent army standing with you. Your pain is real, but you are not your pain. Please reach out. Tell someone. Anyone. Opening the door, even a crack, lets in the light. You don't have to carry this weight alone. Depression is treatable, it is not a life sentence. You are not a lost cause. You deserve care and compassion. Remember, you are not the storm, you are the sky. The storm is temporary, no matter how fierce. Your true self remains beneath the clouds. Surviving is an act of strength. One day the storm will break and the sun will return. The colors will come back, the music will play again. You'll look back with pride. You made it through. The light is waiting for you.